Most readers will hate you if you do this and maybe throw your book. It's kind of harsh, but it's true. Hi, I'm Kaitlyn Turnboo, and I'm the authortuber that helps you write, market, and publish your book the right way the first time. In this video, I'm ranting about my tropes or pet peeves of what I've read in romance novels. This is really devoted to be kind of funny and me to rant, so there are cliches in this. Just forewarned, you've probably heard most of these before. Like most people, they make me mad, and you should probably not do it in your romance novel because I don't like it. Before I get into it, make sure to hit that subscribe button because I've got a surprise for you at the end that you're going to want to hear. So you better stay till the end. And also, if you are already subscribed to me, then just watch till the end, and if you have seen my previous videos, you know what it is. Number 1, love triangles. Personally, I'm only attracted to one guy at a time. I kind of have that whole soul focus thing that I kind of mirror all the rest of them out as a personal person. Love triangles to me in a novel is confusing, and I think that the characters, all of them, are completely insecure and are not ready for any relationship if they're going to put up with something like that. Especially since it's usually a girl and two guys fighting over the girl. I don't know if I would really want to be with someone who isn't sure what they want and isn't mature enough to be able to differentiate the guy's maturity, because they're also immature on their own. I just say screw them all. They need to disperse and go through counseling most of the time, especially since there's been some where they go to the death, and that's really bad. Number 2 is abnormally hot creature. This is definitely a thing with female writers. Typically the guy was sculpted from a science lab. I mean, like, they're just super hot, and they go into detail about their abs and muscles and blue eyes, or if they're attracted to brown eyes, short cut hair, whatever. And usually they bring it up a lot. Somehow this gorgeous man gets together with this not so gorgeous woman who isn't athletic at all and is super insecure and mumbles and chews on her hair. Those two don't match. In reality, if someone is super hot like that, they typically did the work for it, and they meet someone who also is gorgeous. They typically go together. I mean, there's parodies about it all over the place about how couples work out together and somehow are financially awesome. I know a few people like that. Everyone preaches about having flaws in a character, and so this guy needs to have some flaws. 3, plot takeover. This has happened. This actually happens. And I hate it. I hate this one so much that I will stop reading your book if you do this. Period. If I'm reviewing it for you, I will stop and say, I couldn't finish the book because you had a plot takeover. Basically what a plot takeover is when the romance is typically a subplot, and there's the main plot that's typically, I read fantasy, so fantasy, action-y, and then there's a subplot of romance. It's usually the main subplot, but it's still a subplot. And it's a pretty healthy subplot until finally the characters kiss and decide to get together. And somehow, all the demons that are fighting against this main character, all the wars being raged against, somehow that all shuts off for the next 6 chapters, and it's just romance. Every single scene is them on a date. Every single scene they're making out. Like, I love reading romance. I don't want that. I mean, you gotta sprinkle it in, but this has happened. Like I had to stop reading the book when this happens, because it just completely, like, life just stopped for these characters, and they're shoving the romance down the throat. I understand romance is fun to write, but there's a point where it just starts to get kind of unhealthy, and you're like, what? And then, of course, the characters are obsessed. Number 4, an age gap. I can't rant about this one a lot because one of my characters does this. But it is a little bit annoying, and I know people are going to complain about it in my book, but it's cute. So in some cases, it doesn't make sense for, typically in Supernatural, a 500, 400-year-old, typically male, falling in love with a 17, 18-year-old. That's creepy. I understand possibly the 17, 18-year-old falling in love with the older, because I've seen that on news, and at the same time, they look younger, but I think it's creepy that an old guy, like, believe it or not, he's old. He still has the wisdom and experience of a 400-year-old. It just sounds like a predator, like he's just preying on these young women. And usually he's only like on this sole woman, which just sounds really freaky. And somehow they're both naive. I mean, like, I've met 80-year-olds, I hope you have, like older people who are wise because they've got experience and they give really good life advice. So imagine having 5 times that age. You would be pretty wise and have a lot of experience under your belt when it comes to stuff, and you wouldn't be acting 18 to 20. So at least act like your age. And then, yeah, and then the romance between the two. I mean, I've got one, but my 500-year-old acts 500 and isn't really interested in a relationship at first. Number 5, painful virginity. I have lost my virginity, so has like 95% of all society. It was not painful. It was not painful at all. And the thing is most women, that's the case, especially if there was foreplay going into it, especially if there was some sort of feeling for the other two. But typically, writers, they go into so much detail that there's just ripping and shedding and a waterfall full of blood. It's not that bad, and it should not have that much detail in it. I'm more interested in realistic things and lovemaking. And to be honest, if the guy is going to keep going, if it's that painful, then he's a dick and you should dump him because he needs to care enough about you to not do that. Relationship advice. Number 6, I said to not, go into that much detail on the pain, but then I don't like it when you skimp on the lust. If you put a lot of heat and a lot of detail in the kissing and the making out and the relationship developing and the hints of sex and the almost sex, I'm gonna want sex. Well, give it to me, freaking. That sounds really wrong. Seriously, like when they do have sex, you cut it off. I mean, like the book just ends. It just ends, and you're like, you mean I read this whole freaking book, or even sometimes a series, to see if they would finally bang it, and you freaking just, no, like, don't do that. Like, if you're gonna hint at it, you gotta eventually give the readers the satisfaction. Now, a lot of writers do block out the sex, but it's happening. Like, they'll make out, and then the guy will throw the towel on the ground and throw her on the ground, and then boom. But that's appropriate when you haven't hinted at the sex for chapters and chapters and chapters. When you haven't gone into gory detail on their making out. Because if you write that way on every scene, then we're expecting you to write that way with sex. But if you don't put that much amazing detail into, and then I have how to write a kissing scene, and I tell you to go into detail, but if you go into really raunchy detail, and it gets super steamy, and the reader starts feeling steamy reading it, then we're going to expect you to write that through the rest of their relationship. A reader can tell when they're supposed to see a sex scene or not. If you're not wanting to write a sex scene and go through the whole shebang, then you need to not be so sexy in your other scenes, because we're expecting it. Number 7, ownership and possessiveness. This happens in a lot of the hit books. There's some complaints about like teaching people that it's okay to just make that one person your entire life. This typically happens when the romance is the main plot, the romance can be the main plot and they still have a healthy relationship. Like, I'm gonna mention Twilight because Twilight's really bad at it. And I know it's a cliche move, and Twilight's made more money than I have. She fell into a depression for almost a year because she couldn't get over this guy who she knew for less than a year beforehand. And whenever she was with this guy would sneak through her window, and that was the only person she ever hung out with. That was the only person she ever thought of. That almost every scene involved them two. There wasn't a lot of subplot there until later. And so, as a result, of course she would dive into a deep depression because she was obsessed. But then it's the other way around on Edward's part. I mean, he just downright controlled her in some places and forced her to do things she didn't want to do in effort to protect her. Bullcrap. And that happens a lot. Like in other books, like the one of them is like, no, you can't do this, and because I said so, and that's just in the story. And that is not okay. I don't let my current boyfriend ever do that, and he doesn't attempt. Like, it's not gonna happen. I'm gonna have my own life because I've got my own hobbies, and your character should too. 8 is cheating characters. This is more like a type because there's a lot of books that are really big hits and readers rave about. But if the protagonist cheats on their significant other, I drop the book. It is something I don't know. I don't support cheating. Just because you cheat on someone, I don't think that makes you an immediate bad person. But specifically, the protagonist themselves who sleeps with someone else when they're with another person, it makes me lose complete respect for the protagonist, especially if they try to hide it. It's important that your readers always root for your protagonist. And when they stop, they put the book down. I cannot get myself to continue reading those books. And typically after they cheat, they do a few more douchey things so that makes it worse. like they try to hide it, and they try to say how they were right, and they try to make the two fight over them, and sometimes it ends up in a love triangle, and I don't like you anymore, so I'm not going to read about you. Okay, I'm done ranting. This was very off script, by the way, so I don't know if you could tell. Now you've reached to the end. I'm giving away a $100 Amazon Visa card once we hit 1,000 subscribers. All you have to do is subscribe, hit the notification bell, like this video, and comment which pet peeve you disagree with the most, or what is your #1 pet peeve that I did not mention on here. And that's all you gotta do. Feel free to go on my other videos and like and respond to their questions, because this is done at random, so you'll have more chances to win. That's it.